Let me ask you something. How many dreams have died because someone mistook a detour for a dead end? You see, failure doesn't mean you're finished. It means you're being rerouted. When your GPS reroutes you, you don't throw your car into reverse and drive home, do you? No, you follow the new path. Why? Because the destination is still possible, even if the road has changed. In life, failure isn't fatal, it's feedback. It's a divine whisper saying, you're getting warmer, keep going. Every time you fail, you're being refined, not rejected. You are not denied, only delayed. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came from people who refused to let failure define them. They understood one powerful truth: failure is never the end. It's just the bend in the road. Failure isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. It's the silent mentor that often speaks loudest when we think we've lost everything. Most people, when they encounter failure, ask the wrong question: why did this happen to me? But the better question, the one that moves mountains and builds empires, is this: what is this trying to show me? So many people are looking for the straight line to success, the smooth path, the shortcut. But anyone who's ever built anything lasting knows that the road to greatness is never straight. It's winding, it's rugged. It's full of forks, cliffs, and curves you never saw coming. You'll face closed doors, wrong turns, and disappointments that make your chest heavy. But those moments are not the end of your story. They are the markers of growth. Because failure doesn't show up to break you, it shows up to redirect you. Think of the moments when you were forced to pivot. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe the business didn't take off the way you dreamed. In that moment, it probably felt like the ground had been ripped from under you. But what if that was exactly what needed to happen? What if the door that closed wasn't rejection, but protection? You see, life will often take you away from what you want, just so it can guide you toward what you truly need. You may have set out on one road with a clear vision in your mind, but then somewhere along the way, the terrain changed. A roadblock appeared. A detour sign popped up. And you started to panic. You thought, this isn't the plan. But the truth is that detour wasn't off track. It was part of the track. It's not the road you planned, but it's the road that will make you. It's where the real transformation begins. You were never meant to grow only when things go right. Growth is forged in the fires of resistance. When things don't go your way, that's where you learn what you're really made of. That's where you discover new parts of yourself, strengths, insights, ideas that would have stayed buried if everything had been smooth sailing. You don't build resilience by getting it right every time. You build it by getting it wrong, picking up the pieces, and finding a better way. That failed product launch, it wasn't the end of your idea. It was just a correction. That investment that didn't return, it was tuition. That moment of embarrassment when it all fell apart, that wasn't your destruction. That was your reintroduction. You're not who you were before, you're stronger now. Wiser. More equipped, and more dangerous to any obstacle that tries to stand in your way. The truth is, failure peels back the layers of who you thought you had to be, so you can finally become who you were meant to be. It strips away the illusions, the pride, the comfort, and it shows you the raw material you've got inside. And when you learn to look at it not as punishment, but as preparation, everything changes. Take a look at the people who've changed the world. The icons, the pioneers, the innovators. Without exception, they were all people who failed, and failed often. But they didn't let those failures define them. They let them refine them. They allowed those moments to chisel their character, sharpen their vision, and fuel their drive. They didn't say, I failed, so I'm done. They said, I failed, so I'm learning. And because of that, they rose. Failure reveals paths you wouldn't have chosen on your own. And often they're the paths that hold your greatest destiny. You may have never voluntarily walked away from what was comfortable, but failure pushes you out of the nest. It forces you to fly. You wouldn't have left the job, the town, the relationship, the strategy, but failure said, it's time to go. And in the moment, it feels cruel. It feels confusing. But later, when you've grown through it, you realize it was the best thing that could have happened to you. There's a story of a man who spent his life climbing a tall mountain. With every step, he thought he was heading toward the summit of success. But halfway up, he slipped. He lost his grip, fell hard. Everything he built seemed to collapse. But when he dusted himself off, he realized he'd landed on a ledge with a view of another peak, one he didn't even know existed, a higher one, a more beautiful one. And from that new vantage point, he could see clearly he'd been climbing the wrong mountain. Failure didn't push him down, it elevated him. It realigned him with his true path. That's what it does. It uncovers possibilities you wouldn't have considered. It humbles you, yes, but it also expands you, because now you know more. You've felt more. You've seen the underbelly of disappointment, and you've survived it. And once you've been through that fire, you stop being afraid of it. You start seeing it for what it really is, a forge. Let's take it one level deeper. Failure isn't just a detour to your purpose. It's the revealer of hidden opportunities. Most people stop at failure and miss the treasure buried beneath it. They see the surface of the fall, but never mind the gold underneath. You've got to dig. You've got to ask, what's the opportunity in this? What is this trying to unlock in me? Because there's always something. Inside every defeat, there's a seed, an idea, an improvement, a revelation, a strategy you never would have found had you succeeded on the first try. Failure has a way of cracking open the shell so that the seed can sprout. But most people never get past the shell. They never lean in and search. But the ones who do, they grow gardens in the very fields that others walked away from. Some of the most successful inventions in history were born from failed attempts. The sticky notes on your desk came from a glue that didn't stick. The microwave came from a melted candy bar. The light bulb, well, that one took 1,000 failures before it illuminated the world. But what if those inventors had said, if it didn't work, I give up? The world would be darker, literally and figuratively. So here's the truth you need to hold onto. A failure carries within it the embryo of innovation. But you've got to be willing to look beyond the disappointment and extract the lesson. Don't waste your pain. Don't just suffer. Study, ask the tough questions, reflect, analyze, improve, and then return to the battlefield smarter, sharper, and stronger. The people who go the furthest in life are not those who avoid failure. They're the ones who use it. They recycle it. They let it become fuel. When something doesn't work, they don't sit in the ashes, weeping over what could have been. They gather the ashes, mix them with their faith, mold something new. They get up and say, I've seen what doesn't work. Now I'm closer to what will. And here's the kicker. Every time you rise from failure, your self-belief multiplies. That's the quiet miracle of falling. You may have thought the setback was a subtraction, but it's actually addition. You didn't lose power. You gained proof. Proof that you can survive the storm, that you can face the fire and come out with more clarity, more conviction, more creativity. Each defeat handled correctly becomes a rehearsal for victory. Each no brings you closer to your yes. Each closed door sharpens your vision for the right one. And once you grasp that, you'll stop moving through failure differently. You won't shrink back. You won't feel defeated. You'll walk into the detours with curiosity, with courage, with anticipation, knowing that something good is being born, even if you can't see it yet. Don't fear failure. Embrace it as part of your success journey. See it as a detour sign from destiny. It's not saying stop. It's saying this way. It's the universe whispering, there's something better ahead. Trust the process. Adjust your sails. Keep moving, because failure is never a dead end. It's a directional shift, a compass recalibration, a growth accelerator. It's life's way of preparing you for something bigger than what you first imagined. The road may change, but the destination is still yours. If you don't give up. When you think of the word failure, what emotion rises in your chest? Is it fear? Shame? That's what most people feel, because they've been taught that failure is something to avoid. They've been programmed to believe that it's the enemy, the signal that they weren't good enough, smart enough, fast enough. But that's not what failure is, not even close. Failure isn't the enemy of success. It's the gym where your mental muscles are built. It's the place where inner strength is forged, where toughness is tested, and where champions are born. You don't build real power in your life when things are easy. You build it when the pressure is on, when the setbacks come, when your plans fall apart. That's when you discover what you're made of. Just like a bodybuilder doesn't grow by lifting feathers, your mind doesn't grow by coasting through easy wins. It needs resistance. It needs weight. It needs failure. The heavier the failure, the stronger the growth, if you choose to rise instead of retreat. You see, the greatest advantage failure gives you is the chance to become emotionally unshakable. People often look at those who've succeeded massively and think they must have been lucky. No, what they were was resilient. They had trained themselves over time to endure, to rise after falling, to think when others panicked, to stay calm when everything around them was collapsing. That kind of mental fortitude isn't inherited. It's earned, and it's earned through the tough, gritty, lonely process of failing and choosing not to quit. Every time you fail and get back up, You're doing more than just continuing the journey. You're becoming a different person, a more capable person, a wiser one. A more dangerous one, dangerous to doubt, to fear, to limitation. You start to walk with a quiet confidence that says, throw what you want at me. I've been down before, I know how to rise. That's not arrogance, that's resilience. And it's one of the most powerful forces in the world. Failure handled properly trains your mind to expect more from itself. It says, yes, that strategy didn't work. Yes, that moment hurt. But we're still standing, so what's the next move? That's the internal dialogue of a strong mind. Weak minds say, this happened to me. Strong minds say, this happened for me. They look for the value in the failure. They squeeze it until wisdom comes out. They don't run from it. They interrogate it. They don't say, why me? They say, watch me. The difference between those who thrive and those who just survive comes down to how they respond when things break. Because they will break, plans will fall through, people will betray you, opportunities will close. It's inevitable. But your response, that's what separates mediocrity from greatness. That's what determines whether failure becomes your prison or your platform. And it's not about pretending the pain isn't real. Let's be honest, failure hurts. There's no denying that. When you've poured your heart into something and it crumbles, it feels like part of you crumbled with it. But pain is not the problem. The problem is when you let that pain define your future. The problem is when you build your identity around the fall instead of the rise. There's a man right now whose business just went under, and he thinks he's done. There's a woman whose relationship just ended, and she thinks she's unlovable. There's a student who failed the exam and now believes they're stupid. But those failures are not facts, they're moments. They're not who you are, they're what you experienced. And if you allow yourself to step back into the arena, bruised but breathing, you'll find out that your spirit was never defeated. It was being disciplined. Understand this. Every failure is training. Every setback is a mental workout. You're lifting the weight of discouragement, of rejection, of disappointment. And when you choose to keep going, you're tearing down the weakness and building up the strength. It's the same process your body uses at the gym. Resistance, rest, recovery, growth. You go through the fire not to burn, but to become refined. But here's where most people lose the game. They confuse failure with finality. They mistake a temporary loss for a permanent condition. They quit, right at the edge of the breakthrough. They give up when they were just one step away from winning. And that's the real tragedy. Because failure doesn't defeat you. Quitting does. You can fall 1,000 times and still make it, if you keep getting back up. But quit once, and it's over. That's what makes quitting the only true failure. Not because it's shameful, but because it halts the process. It freezes the momentum. It says, this is as far as I'll go, and locks the door on everything you could have become. The most dangerous word in the world isn't failure. It's quit. Because it seduces you. It tells you, you've done enough. It whispers, why keep trying? It paints quitting as self-care, as wisdom, as the logical next step. But really, quitting is the abandonment of your potential. It's the surrender of your power. And too many people have made peace with quitting because they were afraid of the pain of failing again. But if you knew what was on the other side of persistence, you'd fight through every failure with joy. You'd embrace the grind. You'd welcome the detours. Because you'd understand that every no is shaping your yes. Every delay is refining your delivery. Every obstacle is preparing your obedience to a greater vision. You've got to decide that quitting isn't an option, not just in theory, but in your bones. You've got to make it a rule in your life. I will not quit. No matter how hard it gets. No matter how long it takes. No matter who doubts me. Because the moment you remove quitting as a possibility, your brain starts looking for solutions instead of exits. It starts building bridges instead of burning dreams. Think about it. When you were a child, you didn't quit when you fell. You didn't give up when you couldn't speak clearly. You didn't say, well, I tried walking twice. Didn't work, I guess I'll crawl forever. No, you tried again, and again, and again. And that's how you grew. Somewhere along the way, society taught you that failure was bad, that mistakes were embarrassing, that falling was failure. But your soul knows better. Your soul remembers the fight, the persistence, the fire. You've just got to reignite it. And the good news, it's still in you, the grit, the determination, the relentless drive. You might have buried it under doubt and fear, but it's not dead. It's dormant. And failure is the spark that can awaken it if you let it. If you stop running from it and start embracing it as the catalyst of your evolution. There is no strength without struggle. There is no growth without discomfort. And there is no greatness without the courage to fail and the will to rise again. So every time you fail, smile a little. Not because it feels good, but because you know what it means. It means you're growing. It means you're building something that matters. It means you're in the arena, not the stands, and that in itself is victory. Do not let your mind play tricks on you. Do not let temporary disappointment blind you to permanent destiny. You were not born to start and stop. You were born to finish, to endure, to overcome. So when the voice in your head says, "It's over," answer back, "No, it's just beginning." When the world says, "Give up," whisper, "Watch me." And when failure knocks you down, look up and say, "Thank you. I'm getting stronger," because you are stronger, wiser, sharper, every single time. Failure isn't the thing that weakens you. It's the thing that strengthens you. Quitting weakens you. Doubt weakens you. But every fall, every misstep, every time you look defeat in the eye and keep going, you are lifting mental weights that most people aren't strong enough to pick up. And that is what separates the good from the great, the quitters from the legends, the spectators from the champions. So many people walk through life thinking that failure is a punishment, that when something doesn't go as planned, it's life's way of saying, "You don't deserve this." But the truth is radically different. Failure is not rejection, it's preparation. It's not life saying, "No forever." It's life saying, "Not yet," because there's more you need to learn before you can carry what you're asking for. You don't plant a seed today and expect a tree tomorrow. It takes time. And in that time, you don't see much movement. You don't see the roots digging deep. You don't see the soil reshaping. But just because you don't see progress doesn't mean progress isn't happening. The same is true with failure. Just because things aren't working on the outside doesn't mean something powerful isn't forming on the inside. The mistake most people make is judging the process too soon. They give up halfway through the shaping process because it's taking longer than they expected. But what they don't realize is this: the size of the setback often matches the size of the calling. If you're going through heavy resistance, it's because you're being prepared for something heavy to carry. And the greater the responsibility, the deeper the preparation. Life isn't denying you, it's equipping you. Think about the very thing that went wrong in your life, the deal that didn't close, the person who walked away, the launch that flopped, the dream that slipped through your fingers. What if that wasn't failure at all? What if it was training? What if it was life saying, "You're not being buried, you're being planted"? A seed doesn't look like much when it's underground. It looks like it's dead, covered in darkness, pressed down by dirt. But something powerful is happening in that darkness. The shell is breaking, the roots are digging, the structure is forming, and eventually, when the time is right, the breakthrough happens. That's what failure is. It's the dirt before the bloom. It's not a sign to quit, it's a sign to dig deeper. But most people don't stay in it long enough to see the transformation. They get discouraged. They start believing the lie that just because it didn't work now, it will never work. And they walk away, right before the breakthrough. They abort the process before the promise shows up. That's why it's so important to stay, to keep going, to trust the invisible work. Because failure isn't a stop sign. It's a signal that you're still in the process. It's a signal that you're still becoming, still evolving, still being shaped for what you've asked for. You can't cheat that process. You can't skip steps and expect to stand strong. That's why people who succeed too quickly without foundation often fall just as fast. But those who fail and learn, fail and rise, fail and reflect, they build depth, they build resilience, they build roots that hold, even when the storms come. Look at any person who's done anything worthwhile. They didn't get there by gliding over life. They were forged in difficulty, sculpted in adversity. They didn't treat failure as the end. They treated it as an education. They didn't walk away when it didn't go their way. They asked, "What is this teaching me?" And that's why they rose above the rest. Because they used the struggle as a school, not a sentence. Every time you fail, you're being sharpened. Every setback is trimming something that won't serve you later. Every disappointment is removing a piece of immaturity, pride, or doubt that would have sabotaged your success if it had been left in place. The process is painful, yes, but it's protective. And if you let it finish its work, you'll come out stronger, clearer, and more unstoppable than ever before. But to reach that level, you must adopt a mentality that refuses to quit. A mentality that sees failure not as defeat, but as feedback. That sees rejection not as punishment, but as redirection. That sees delay not as denial, but as development. Here's something you need to burn into your spirit. Success is on the other side of not giving up. Period. That's it. That's the formula. Not talent. Not genius. But staying in the game when others walk off the field. Pushing forward when it would be easier to turn back. Showing up again and again and again until the door opens. Not because it was handed to you, but because you refuse to stop knocking. The only way to fail permanently is to quit. Everything else is just a chapter. And if you turn the page, the story keeps going. But if you close the book, you'll never know what could have been. And that's the real tragedy. Not failing, but never finding out how far you could have gone because you gave up too soon. Let me tell you something, Relv, you are not done. I don't care how bad it looks right now. I don't care how far behind you feel. I don't care how many losses you've taken. If you've got breath in your lungs, the game isn't over. There's still something in you that this world needs. There's still something in your future worth fighting for. You've come too far to let failure convince you that your journey ends here. You have to become the kind of person who keeps building while it's raining, who keeps believing even when nothing is showing, who keeps walking even when the road disappears. Because those are the people who win. Not because they never failed, but because they never stopped. Even when everyone else said, "You're wasting your time," they kept going. Even when the critics laughed, they kept going. Even when the bank account was empty and the support system fell apart and the odds were stacked against them, they kept going. And because they kept going, the tide eventually turned. Doors eventually opened. Momentum finally broke through. And when it did, it wasn't magic. It was earned. You see, most people want harvest, but they hate the season of planting. They want reward, but they avoid resistance. But the truth is, failure is the doorway through which all champions must walk. It's not just something to survive. It's something to use, to harness, to lean into. Because if you can learn from your failure, you are already stronger than most people who've only known success. Don't envy the person who never fails. Envy the one who has fallen 10 times and is still standing. That's the person who's truly dangerous. That's the person who cannot be stopped. Because their confidence isn't built on circumstances. It's built on character. They don't need everything to go right in order to believe in their future. They've trained themselves to believe in the process. And the process works. Every time, if you don't quit. So the question isn't, will you fail? The question is, what will you do when you fail? Will you shrink? Will you disappear? Or will you rise with fire in your bones, wisdom in your hands, and clarity in your heart? Will you say, "This is not the end of me. It's the beginning of a stronger me"? Because that's what failure gives you if you let it. It gives you a new version of yourself. A more capable one. A more focused one. A more prepared one. You're not going backward. You're being propelled forward, through the fire, through the pressure, through the struggle. But only if you keep going. Only if you stay open to the lesson. Only if you trust that even this, especially this, is part of your preparation. And the people who truly succeed in life are not those who never fall. They're the ones who look failure in the face and say, "You won't break me. You'll make me." And then they get back up, every time.